Hi there, welcome to Cocktail Mode, the podcast where we're going to talk about Wrestlefest, classic arcade-only wrestling game from 1991. Just to give us a nice little tie-in with WrestleMania coming this weekend. And today we have my mate Dave.
Hello.
And guest co-host Chris.
Hi guys, it's Chris Tetroplay. May know me from my own wrestling podcast, Once Upon a Turnbuckle, where I not only delve into my own memories of the 80s and 90s, the classic, the golden age of wrestling, but I also get to talk to people who have been involved in the industry or are currently involved in the industry. So you can catch that. It's on my YouTube channel and Spotify. It's everywhere that you find your podcast, really.
I didn't realise you had video as well. I listened to it on Spotify.
Yeah, I got a YouTube. Well, I'm on it on everything.
What's it called?
For the purpose of this episode, you could just put in "Once Upon a Turnbuckle" and you'll find my. Don't laugh. Nobody laughs.
I love it. That's
a
brilliant.
Title.
What is a turnbuckle?
Layman's terms, a turnbuckle is the corner of the ring where the ropes meet. Yeah, it basically comes off of the. You get the ring posts, and the turnbuckles come off of there, and it's what the ropes go into. It holds the tension of the ropes and that, I suppose. There we go. That's as technical as I'm going to get.
I say it's the thing that wrestlers get their faces smashed into.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's what it's for. That's what it's there for, Dave. It's there to get your face smashed into.
I tell you what, I'd be really interested to see how a ring is built and put together in an arena, because they're never permanent, are they? They're always like, this week at the Civic Centre, it's wrestling.
Yeah,
that's it.
And they obviously come along and they build the ring and then presumably take it away and move it to the next town.
What's always got me? So I've only been to one, I'd say, like big major wrestling show, which is a WWF one back in the day, and it's in like the NEC. It's pretty grand scale, everything that you would think it was. And then I go to these more kind of local independent ones, and the size of the ring there and how close you are, it's really quite shocking because they are a lot smaller scale. But you're right, they are. You know, I sat there when I was at the last one, kind of thinking, how long does it take to put together? I wonder what's under there, and you know, it's. I think on these indie shows, most of the wrestlers on there probably have some hand in actually putting everything together, which is quite good.
Yeah. You're probably road crew as well, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it.
I can tell you what's under there. It's normally like a chair wrapped in barbed wire.
No, there's a bag of a snake.
Yes. Now we're talking the back in the good old days.
There's a bag of a snake, a woman, a guitar that will just miraculously break at the first touch against anyone's head.
Yeah.
You sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole, Chris, because I've never really paid any attention to basically, you know, I guess it's the grassroots of wrestling, isn't it? These like independent British wrestling. And everything you talk about going to the NEC, I was weird that I reckon I looked at very briefly 5 or 6 videos and 4 of them were in churches.
Yeah.
Or church halls. It just
church
seems
halls,
weird.
Schools, town halls. They frequent. There is one, and I don't think they're in Britain somewhere, but I don't know exactly where they are. But it is it's at a church run by a church group. They offer. It's one of the things the church offers is wrestling on a Saturday night. You know,
that's amazing.
Can't get much more British than that.
Right, that's great. Wrestling on a Saturday, jumble sale on a Sunday.
That's it. The sermon on the Sunday and then the jumble sale.
Oh yeah,
all in one place. You don't have to leave your seat. Yeah. There we go.
I get something else that quite. You're right. The scale is funny, and the size of the crowd. I mean, I think the biggest crowd that I sort of, you look at and you think there's probably 75 to 100 people there in these little things. Sometimes it looked like there was 20 people in the room. These people, these wrestlers, I should say, the amount of preparation and the effort they go to, and then you turn up and 20 people are there, and 10 of them because they haven't got the strength to walk out of the room.
9 of them are your relatives.
Yeah, right. I will say for it though, the atmosphere is still great because you can tell that a lot of the people in the crowds, they go to see that promotion every week, every fortnight, whatever. They know everyone, they know their favourites. They even probably know them personally, but they give them stick, and it makes for a really nice place to be.
Yeah. No, I can see that. What's interesting to me is we're doing this because as this will be published, it'll be WrestleMania at the weekend coming. Yeah, it's a little bit away as we're recording. But I'd be interested to hear sort of how you feel. To me, wrestling has disappeared since the Attitude Era, and now it's reappeared since Netflix acquired it.
Yeah.
And it just seems, and as far as I'm concerned, as a very, 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 very casual viewer, that's how wrestling has happened. In terms of the biggest, most popular type of wrestling. So just to go into what you say, of the three sort of brands within WWE, the NXT, SmackDown and Raw, the NXT crowds are tiny and the atmosphere is incredible.
Yeah.
They're so into it. They're so behind it. I've got a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
They're quite feral. They're quite loyal. Quite feral, I think. Is one word to
The tickets are probably really cheap.
If that, and they'd probably give some of them away as well.
Spend over $50 on booze and you get a free wrestling ticket.
Don't get me started. WCW were great back in the day. The mid-90s, they really struggled to actually sell tickets. They were giving them away to people on the street.
Really?
So you had these people, they were recording these weekly shows. I think it was when they were in MGM studios as well, in Orlando, if that's what I'm thinking, right? There'll be people in the crowd who had not got a fucking clue of what was going on. They weren't wrestling fans. They didn't know who was who. They didn't know what was happening, but they were there. Yeah, it's just laughable.
They do that thing, don't they, where because they always have that fixed camera position, sort of ringside and up and back a bit. Everybody in the crowd is sitting opposite that one camera, just so you can't see how many empty seats there are.
Looks full, as long as they're the ones cheering or moving, even at some point during the evening.
So when you go, Chris, you have a good time. You say you go to these smaller things, and it's a good laugh. Yeah,
it is a good laugh. Yeah, I think the first time that I went to one, I felt almost like this second-hand embarrassment kind of thing kick in, because I was like, these guys are pretending like they're on TV, like the guys you see on TV.
Yeah.
Really, they're performing to such a small crowd. But you get into it and you kind of realise these guys are doing it because they enjoy it and they want that kind of experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good laugh. It helps to be, I suppose, in company of people who are into the same thing. My wife has come around to she's always taken the mickey at me for my love of wrestling. And she's actually come to the point where recently she said, look, if she's letting me embrace it a lot more now. And she said, even if I come as your guest to one of these shows so that you're not on your own. Which is lovely. But I'll tell you what,
mate, that is.
Her resting bitch face would be seen from everywhere in that building. So I don't really know if that would do me good or not. She wouldn't be impressed at all. And, she wouldn't be muttering under her breath like, oh, God, really? Oh, you expect me to believe that kind of thing.
I love the idea that she starts to get into it. She's just like, kick him in the balls!
Yeah. That would be great, wouldn't it? She'll be the one up there probably trying to do it as well. I will go on record early to say I cannot stand the current product. I cannot get on board with it at all.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's going to sound hypocritical of me because I have said on my show many times that when I watched it as a kid, I used to have it on in the background while I was doing something else because I like listening to it. And it was more the sound of it and the people talking that really got me.
Okay.
But these days, they seem to be leaning very heavily into the storylines, the drama, the acting side of it.
Yeah.
The actual execution of what's happening in the ring is so weak. I can't. It is so set up, and yes, people are going to roll their eyes. We all know it's fake and all that. I'm not saying that.
It's what?
Sorry.
What?
Sorry.
No one ever told me that.
Should we talk about Santa as well? No. Anyway, Father Christmas. There was a wrestler who portrayed Santa Claus as well. Just drop that in there, so it's still relevant. So.
I was going to say what would his thing be, but it's kind of obvious, isn't it?
He was literally around for about 2 weeks in 1995, which I did an entire podcast show of my own about 95 in wrestling. It was the worst year ever. And they finished it off by basically having this guy dressed as Santa who then turns heel on another wrestler by whacking him with his bag of presents and beating him up. And he came out for literally one or two appearances after that. He's called Xanta Claus, Xanta, and he was from the South Pole, not the North Pole.
Oh God!
It was great. Santa Claus. Google it.
I mean, Chris,
no,
you have done, and this is a first-time event for Cocktail Mode. You've rendered us both speechless at the same time.
It's quite funny having the conversation. Our kids are reaching the age where we're a bit like, well, we're not sure whether they do or don't. I never had the moment that I realised that Father Christmas wasn't real. But I can tell you when I the idea that wrestling wasn't real was there, which just again tells you everything you need to know about my childhood.
Please tell me the Father Christmas one was recent and wrestling was like 5 years ago.
Father Christmas is real.
But Father Christmas is still real, right? Yeah, it's just wrestling that's fake.
Yeah, exactly. You think back, bringing it back to topics, it's so set up, and it's like there is almost like they're not even trying to make it look like it's meant to be going together.
The thing is, though, it's never not been fake, has it?
No.
I was reading the thing earlier, and going back to like the 20s and 30s, it was staged, it was managed, because otherwise people would die every week.
I think it was the carnivals really started turning it, because they then picked their winners and that, because
it's a show, it's not a sport.
Exactly. Once it leaves the mats of the Olympics or the amateur side, and that again, I will argue this like I do at home quite a lot. I argue till I'm blue in the face. When I was watching it, it looked real. You could suspend your disbelief. But nowadays it's just like, oh my god, really? Are you?
Do you think that's the case throughout all three sub-brands of the WWE?
Yeah, and beyond. Even when you look at AEW and that, I think they're all doing it, and I don't know what's happened exactly. Health and safety stepped in. I get they're not allowed to do what they used to do.
I would bet it's focus groups.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere had a focus group and asked 7 wrestling fans, what do you like most about watching wrestling? And they all said, I love the stories.
The one thing that really sums that up for me is years ago when Freddie Prinze Jr. was on the writing staff. He was on the writing team of WWE. It says all you need to know.
Yeah, wow.
It's being written by Hollywood people, and
I would say, was he not busy with his acting career? But obviously not.
Obviously not.
Given his output over the last 20 years.
It was just that easy to write for WWE, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on. So there's this good guy, right? And there's this bad guy. There was a couple of things that have happened in fairly recently, since I've been paying attention. Basically, because we've known we're going to be doing this episode for a long time, and we don't normally. We normally decide 2 weeks beforehand what we're going to do. So I've been watching it, but I've got back into it a little bit. And I think for me, to give it the positive side to your negative side, I used to watch it in the Attitude Era because I was in my 20s and there were hot women in it, and that was basically it. And they were shit. They were basically there to look good. The women now are proper wrestlers. They can do the stuff. And yes, I know what you're saying, Chris. It is quite often a little bit obvious that this has all been planned out rather than looking a bit more spontaneous. But they are incredible at what they do in terms of the athletic ability and the skills, and I guess in their case the gymnastic ability, which is true of some of the smaller men as well. I know I'm much more into that than I am into a bunch of big sweaty blokes doing very, very little in between shouting at each other.
When I was growing up, I was one of these that I dreamed of being a wrestler, and I obviously I fell a little short. But at the time I was like 5'7". I weighed like 7.5 stone if I was, if I was wringing wet. I was at the I thought I'm never going to be big enough to actually ever do any of this, so I didn't even look at avenues to pursue it. And now you look nowadays, you don't have the guys who are 7 foot tall, 400 pounds, whatever. You don't get them. They're all small, but because it's become more athletic, it lends itself to that. So I think probably what I'm trying to say is I should have left it 25 years and started now, and I'd probably fit in. So.
The other thing what it says, what sort of strikes me as a big difference between when I used to watch it, and I say it was the Attitude Era the last time I paid any attention to it, which weirdly is kind of when our retro for games was around the same era, that sort of certainly the late 90s, 2000. Now you can clearly see that the camera teams are part of the choreography. They're really well versed in getting a shot so somebody appears to come out of nowhere and they're not looking at people getting set up to catch somebody else. They're really part of the thing, and I've got time for that as well. I'm a big fan of martial arts films, and nobody thinks of martial arts. They're not. Nobody thinks they're really fighting, do they? No one says that's not a real fight. They're not really hurting each other. No one cares. It's just brilliant choreography, and I think that's what I like about when I do like wrestling. And I say I have almost against my will got back into it a little bit, and I think it's aided and abetted by it being on Netflix and me being able to fast forward through most of it. I will get get through a 3-hour wrestling episode in half an hour.
Yeah.
Because you just go through all the shit. Oh, look, there's some, what I say. I think I mentioned it on a message on your Facebook thing. They used to be called them the cruiserweights. They don't even separate them anymore, do they? No. It's not really a thing.
No.
So yeah, the girls and the cruiserweights is what I watch now. I really don't bother with anything else.
Be interesting to find out of like a 2-hour show or 3-hour show that they do now, how much is actual wrestling? I think but back in the day, I think when WCW were dying a death, someone actually did that, and they had something stupid like about 20 minutes wrestling. Which is kind of counterproductive when you're running a wrestling promotion, I think, but maybe not.
You'd have thought so.
I think what TKO, the company who have now obviously own WWE and UFC, they are onto a bit of a winner, because they can do what they like over here with WWE, and then basically for those naysayers who say, well, it's not real, it's like, well, come over here, UFC, hold my beer. You know, you can actually see exactly what you want to see over there, but you can see it over here.
Yeah, you can see how not entertaining it is when we...
That's the thing, though, isn't it? I mean, wrestling as a form of combat doesn't work.
One that I listened to a lot of the other podcasts, like Jim Ross had his one, and Eric Bischoff, and that they were entertaining at the time. And Jim Ross, even though he worked for AEW, he had a real thing about the high spots, and you know, every match had them. And he said, why on earth would you and 3 of your mates outside the ring be stood there waiting for a guy to fly down at you without moving? Of course, they're there to catch him, to break his fall. But he said, in reality, you wouldn't do that. You would move the hell out of the way.
To sort of finally mention video games in some context, I think that choreography, and that isn't there. You have to try and make it work as a fighting game, because with all the moves and that, and it doesn't. I don't think it really 100% works.
No, this is one of the things I was going to raise as a point when we actually start talking about the game we're talking about.
Yeah,
it's a fight. It's just a fight. Nothing else to it, and you are playing a fighting game.
Yeah,
it's wrapped up in wrestling. That's how it's presented, but it's not really a depiction of wrestling.
No.
If you were to actually see one of these matches as they play out in these, especially the games like we're going to be talking about, if you were to watch one of those in the ring, you would have turned off, wouldn't you? Because it's just 2 guys there just throwing a punch and a kick, and until one of them runs out of life and falls down.
I don't know. I'd watch that. Depends on who it was.
Well, true. Yeah, I suppose I have just described a very raw version of UFC, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, exactly. A bunch of blokes rolling around on the floor till someone goes out really loudly.
Or can't speak at all, which is the more fun.
Yeah.
Or can't walk.
Yeah.
It's kind of brutal, isn't it?
It is.
I was thinking earlier, I thought I've only played a few wrestling games, and then when I started to really think about it, I have played a few, but I think in terms of the branded wrestling games, I've only actually played 3, and it's Wrestlefest, Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, and I've got WWE 13, which I played for long enough to realise that I didn't want to be playing this. And that was it. But Wrestlefest and Royal Rumble are both Royal Rumble based game, when it's just fucking chaos.
Yeah.
Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, you can have 10 people in the room at the same time, in the ring, at the same time. And it's just mental. It's like, there's no skill involved. There's no choreography involved. It's just the running bulldog is the most overpowered move in the game, because you can literally just run towards a group of people and hammer that button and you'll grab someone. It'll work.
I wrote down the list actually of all the, because I was interested to go back and see what wrestling games I actually played. And there was more than I remembered. Pro Wrestling on the Master System was my first one.
Right.
And quite laughingly, I saw the front cover after all these years earlier on, and there is a guy who looks like he's headlocking his own head on the front cover.
Is it an early piece of AI art?
I think this is where AI started. But that was as basic as you come. It was a non-branded one. You know, they had some fantastically dull names on there, but the rudiments were there, the same as they were with all the others. But you know, I took it was my Mega Drive really, where I played the best ones. WWE Raw.
Did you ever play on the Mega Drive a Japanese game called Ringside Angels?
No.
It was the reason I bought a Japanese converter.
Okay.
I always saw the box. There used to be a shop in Bedford that did imported games, and they would have Japanese games, and I just thought, female wrestling? Yeah, I want that. How do I play that? This guy was like, you need a converter that's basically just like a thing you slot in, and then you slot the cartridge into that. Yeah, can I have one of those, please? It was a good game, just not a great game.
Mainly for me, it was the WWF ones. So, yeah, WWF Raw. WrestleMania, the arcade game, I think was the the most recent one that I had for much of my childhood. Similar in style to Wrestlefest, I suppose, because it came from an arcade game and it was probably more just a beat 'em up than any other kind of, skill involved.
I think I played this earlier, so from about 95.
95, and there's some weird ass things you can do in there.
I've got it on MAME. It's more like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
No, genuinely, it looks a lot like Mortal Kombat. That sort of digitized footage of real people.
It was real motion.
And the moves
capture.
in it are just literally punch and kick the shit out of people.
Yeah, and then
there's very little wrestling.
They've all got their own signature moves, which are just basically an exaggeration of their character. Like I think the Undertaker, for example, will steal your soul, things like that. Probably not something you'll see him do.
Well, maybe.
Doink the Clown's one, he has one of those, like those hand buzzer things like clowns do, and he electrocutes you. It's probably the most fun one I've played, I'll say that. But it had that real arcade feel, and as we'll probably realise when we talk about this a bit more, is I wasn't really big into arcades when I was growing up, so I didn't get to play this one when it was actually in the arcades or anything. I don't even think I ever saw Wrestlefest in arcade when I was a kid. The first I saw of it was when I got my emulator handheld thing about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was finally able to play it then. It's
that's because if I remember right, Dave, it was in the Mega Bowl in Bedford.
No, it was in the Zap Zone.
Was it?
We had a leisure park created in the early 90s in Bedford. They had a laser tag place that doubled as an arcade, and they had it in there. The reason it's on the list is because I pumped as much money into this game as I did into Street Fighter 2, which was a fuck ton.
In that, you can basically buy life rather than in most arcade games where you buy. You are buying life, but you're buying a continue, really. Start off where you left off. You can
a retry.
Yeah, in Wrestlefest, I was quite interested because I never realised this from back in the day, but playing it recently, if you're getting low, you can buy more life for your wrestler.
A full recharge, because Hogan comes on screen and tells you he can do so, which is
This is quite funny because you look at when this was released and it's the height of it's just before the steroid scandal came about. Yeah. It's probably quite fitting, really, isn't it? Because that's sort of what they were doing. So
Ultimate Warrior's gone under the ring. I wonder what he's doing.
When did Hulk Hogan, let's not beat around the bush, the utter piece of shit that he turned out to be?
Yeah.
When did he become kind of bigger than the rest of the show? When was it that it became more about Hulk Hogan than wrestling?
He was there 1984 when he won his first world title, and then Vince McMahon got a bit of a hard-on for him, I think. And it was basically, he saw the amount of money he could make from Hulkamania, and this is where he ended up. It's WrestleMania 1. That's where it all kind of turned, and I think he was the main driving force behind that because of how popular he was. And then he was able to marry him with all the celebrities and everything. And then I think because they put him on this pedestal, his ego became about as big as the arenas that he was performing in.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I think Vince McMahon just basically saw him as the cash cow. He was the reason why his promotion was becoming more popular, and that was that. And, he couldn't do any wrong, even though you look back on it now and he was doing things very wrong.
He was doing lots of wrong, and still is.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, you put somebody in that position of we're going to base our entire company around you being this glorious icon. It's going to be difficult for it not to go to your head.
Especially when you're on that many drugs as well. It's all, feeding into your ego in various different ways, isn't it?
Yeah, what made me laugh, because I first got into wrestling when I was 7. It was 1991, same year that WrestleFest came out, funnily enough. And I had Hulk Hogan was if you were a wrestling fan back then, it was either him or the Warrior. And me and my cousin were both into wrestling. He was the one that got me into it. He got all the Ultimate Warrior stuff, which I really wanted because it was cool. But I got all the Hulk Hogan stuff, and I just had him round down my throat for that many years. So when it came round to 1993, and he came back to the WWF, noticeably smaller, funnily enough, because he couldn't take steroids anymore, and nobody liked him, nobody wanted him. And it's really funny to see how, in his head, he's still the god, but actually the fans from there just go away. Yeah, and that which re-emerged very recently, didn't it? Because he turned up at, was it the first episode on Netflix of Raw? Yeah. And, as much as people around the world may have a very low opinion of wrestling fans, they booed that motherfucker out. They did. And it wasn't like comedy heel booing. It was like
fuck off, you're a piece of shit.
It was. And because that was live, they couldn't do what they did at Royal Rumble 92, which I thought was hilarious. When he got eliminated from the Royal Rumble by Sid Vicious, the fans went nuts. They loved it.
Yeah.
So what Vince McMahon had to do is when they released it, he had to pipe booze over all of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know that.
And there you go. And he's like, even back then, that was just about the point I think fans were like, no, we've had enough of you now. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And he can't do that now when it's live TV. It's great.
No. Yeah, which is, I think perhaps maybe to a certain extent, the extent that it's live, and I know the editing and continuancy, what's it called?
Continuity.
That's the one. Thanks, Dave. Was a big thing back in the day. I think when you talk about how very sort of obviously rehearsed and practiced and staged it is over how it used to be, maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're overthinking because it is 100% live what they can and can't do.
Well, the thing is, they don't know how the crowd are going to react on a night, do they?
I suppose not, no.
So they'll write a storyline, they'll write an arc for somebody,
Yeah.
have it majority planned out, and then on the night it might go differently to how they expect, and the crowd sides with the other person, and all of a sudden, well, tough shit, you're not getting your shot at the title anymore because the crowd don't like you.
Yeah, and many occasions, I don't think Triple H is the only one to do it. I think Vince McMahon did this as well, where he would rewrite a show halfway through, just purely because either he had an idea or because he was actually for once in his life listening to what the crowd was saying. And responded to that. I think Triple H is trying to do things a little bit more unpredictably now.
Is he in charge of it all now then?
So he's what is his job title this week? I can't remember. He is the guy in charge of creative there now.
He's always commissioner, wasn't it? Was commissioner in charge of it all?
Chief. It was back when they were fake positions. You had the president and you had the commission, the on-screen people.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, I was about to ask actually. So is Triple H actually doing that? Is he actually involved in it?
He is in charge
of just the face of it.
No, he is in charge of the creative side. So for all intents and purposes, people see him as running the show. There is someone above him where Vince McMahon used to be, but he's the one writing the stories basically and deciding what's happening.
That's cool. I know Dave is doing a very good job of keeping that, because Dave doesn't watch or give a shit about wrestling in any way, shape or form.
You will by the end of this.
No, I won't.
So I don't think that the most recent big event in the build-up to WrestleMania, what number is it, Chris? It's WrestleMania
41, I think, this year.
Yeah, 41 is...
The last time I watched wrestling, it was WrestleMania 7.
That was shit as well.
But
it was better than this.
John Cena, Dave, who I guarantee you have actually heard of.
I have heard of him, yes. He's in Fast and the Furious.
That's right, yeah. He has been a face good guy for his entire career.
Yeah, so I know what a face is. I'm not that fucking green. I have the Wikipedia of wrestling terms open on another monitor. Fuck you very much. No, I tell you what, that page has been weird reading all day.
Oh, yeah,
I've been occasionally glancing at it, like, a what? And a what? And that's what the fuck? Like today I've learned the word kayfabe.
There you go.
Kayfabe is wrestling parlance for what in 1984, the novel by George Orwell, is referred to as doublethink.
Oh, really?
It's knowing that something is fake but convincing yourself that it's true.
Oh, well, that's actually quite cool.
I like that, because back
that was worth interrupting me for.
Thank you.
In my childhood, actually, it was more a case of not convincing yourself it was real. It was convincing everyone else that it was real. You knew it was real. Or maybe you were, in so doing that, you were trying to convince yourself it was real.
But yeah, the point I was making, Dave, is John Cena is now, for the first time in his career, on his farewell tour. This is the end of his career in the WWE. Finally turned heel.
Oh, okay.
It's a big deal. And it was a genuine shock, wasn't it? I mean, as much as, everyone knows that wrestling is fake and, the storyline is made beforehand, I genuinely don't think anybody expected that to be part of the thing.
No. They've been calling for it for 20 odd years and it's not happening.
Yes.
So my point when it happened was, okay, fair enough, fair play, you're going to do this. Are we just trying to cram everything that he hasn't done into the last year? We're going to turn him heel. We're going to give him the record-breaking 17th world title reign. Are we going to do all this just because he hasn't done it? He's gone in with a wish list to say, can I do this, please?
Probably.
I fair play. You may as well roll that dice. You've not done it all these years. See what happens.
Yeah, there is a big sort of spectrum at the minute, isn't there, in the current wrestling of sort of brand new talent on a very regular basis, and also hawking out the guys who've been doing it for 20 years plus at the same time. I find that a little bit odd.
It's always around this time of year they do it. They all come out for a big payday.
Funny that.
Yeah. Bit of a kick in the teeth, really. Like an actual kick in the teeth.
It is a metaphorical kick in the teeth followed by an actual kick in the teeth.
I would be if I was new, or I was a couple of years into my career and I was wanting to get that spot, and here comes Goldberg again. He's got his Zimmer frame, but we're going to have him out there and have him squash someone in 30 seconds. Yeah,
no, I watching the Women's Royal Rumble. There's lots of people in there who are new and trying to make their place, and then Trish Stratus rocks out and everyone goes absolutely extra. And don't get me wrong, Trish Stratus must be pushing 50 and she looks incredible, but it's and she's still doing your actual wrestling. She was always one of the few from back in the day who could actually do the wrestling rather than just there to get down to her underwear for the thrill of hervy people like me. But it's but
at least you acknowledged that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I didn't think if he wasn't, we would.
So. yeah. Quite ready to push that button.
But the NXT is very forward on the female wrestling, and wrestling nowadays is much better. In the time I've been watching it, which hasn't been very long, I think there's been 2 or 3 main events at not just NXT that have been women's matches, and that would have never happened back in the day.
The fact that they can fill a 30-woman Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
I mean, they wouldn't have had that, back when I was watching it, you'd be lucky to have a tag team match come out of what they had.
Absolutely, yeah.
It might be one of the reasons why they do bring back these other names or bring them in from other promotions because they haven't got enough.
Could be,
but yeah, fair play. It's a good thing to happen, I suppose.
The way you're really begrudging about modern wrestling,
you
Chris.
Don't sound convinced at all.
No, I don't want people to think I've got a problem with this
I like women's rights.
I think fair play. If they finally got there, and it was quite good to see that they a few years ago a women's match main evented WrestleMania over all the men's matches. That was fantastic. It is just a bit of an eye opener coming from what I used to watch. How it's. I've missed that entire revolution, as they called it, the women's revolution. I didn't see any of that. So once I dive into it, and then all of a sudden there are these women who are actually doing things that resemble wrestling finally.
Yeah.
Fair play. And I did actually mean that. I know it sounded really bitter, but no, fair play.
I'm 100% with you, Chris. So I genuinely used to watch it for Stacey Keebler, and that was about it. And the fact that even, obviously I've grown up a lot. Wrestling has grown up a lot too. And
Well, no, you've grown up a bit. You haven't grown up much, trust me.
But it's in the intervening 20 odd years, we've not been friends, but now we're sort of caught up again over a pint when I've got nothing better to watch on telly.
That's what I tend to go back to.
We've both grown up quite a lot, and I can enjoy it again for different reasons. I genuinely think in terms of it is entertainment, and it's in the name now. It says it right there. For me, the women's matches are more entertaining to watch than most of the men's matches.
Yeah, we'll give you that.
So, Wrestlefest, right?
Yes. Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
You
mean we're going to talk about the game and not all the wrestling that I've had to read about all fucking day?
Where I wanted to go when you were talking about Hogan previously, I think it's quite interesting. Wrestlefest came out in 91, and Hogan's in it, but he's not like the face of the game. The Legion of Doom are the face of the game. And it's weird that it's 91, which I think was still fairly big news Hogan time.
Yeah.
And, as you say, Ultimate Warrior, he's in it as well. But the Legion of Doom were the face of the game.
Were they like the bosses or something on there?
Yeah, you couldn't play as them.
The main reason they're there is that they were very new. And were instantly popular.
Because they had big spiky shoulder pads.
Yeah, exactly. They came in, they were previously called the Road Warriors. They came from one of the other wrestling franchises. Rebranded as Legion of Doom and were instantly popular because they looked really good and really interesting. And the game designers very much were like, we're going to make it more a tag team game than anything else. And these guys are going to be the bosses.
And to be fair, visually, they probably would shift. They'd be a lot more attractive to see on the shelf, wouldn't they? Than
more impactful, definitely.
Yeah.
But there's only like 2 actual tag teams in the game as well. I mean, it's got 2 modes, Royal Rumble and Tag Team, but there's only actually 2 like actual tag teams in it.
Demolition, yeah.
Demolition, yeah.
Not the original Demolition.
No.
It used to be a guy called Axe and Smash, and then when Axe started to get horrifically injured and couldn't wrestle anymore, they got in a new guy called Crush, and it's Smash and Crush in the game.
Wow, well read.
I picked this game to add to the list years ago because I played this game. This is when I was into wrestling. 1991 was around the time I was actually into wrestling. So all my knowledge, other than what I've Wikipedia'd today, which mostly is the old stuff, actually. It's where people came from to get into WWF. Their background stories are really, really interesting.
They were back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, I had to work at it back then. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a lot
Is
of work.
that why they're so fucking old? The pictures on Wrestlefest on the title screen, digitized pictures. I mean, all of them are balding. I mean, mid 40s to 50s, right? I mean, really
Not as much as you
the
think.
drugs again.
I'd say Earthquake is in that game.
Yes.
So he came into WWF in 1989, and what I read the other day, I think he was 26. So by the time that came out, he was 28. And you look at what he looked like then, and
tough paper round.
Yeah, quite.
One of that's died since.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of them have died.
So a lot of the ones on there, yeah.
This is one of the things I made notes on today.
In terms of like Wrestlefest, the Wrestlefest lineup and people who have died for, wrestling reasons, as in, drugs and hard life. I think there's only two. Earthquake died of a heart attack or something, didn't he? Yeah. It wasn't wrestling related.
42, cancer.
Yes, right. That was it. Yeah, it was, a couple of the others. Not so much.
A lot of heart attacks.
Yeah, funny that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Boss Man died at 41 of a heart attack.
So he was less than 41 in that game.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But this was the 80s, 90s. Everyone looked old now. I don't know what's happened. Everyone seems to be aging backwards at the minute. But yeah. I mean, Hulk Hogan looks like he's been 50 for 80 years.
Basically, plastic surgery and sunglasses. It covers all manner of sins.
There we go.
So you said you were about 7 in 91.
Yes.
When this came out. So what would you sort of see of as like your era of wrestling, effectively? Sort of mid to late 90s, presumably?
Yeah. Early 90s is where I fondly go back to. Late 90s, I hated the Attitude Era at the time because I was almost like, this is going south, this is just trash, what has happened to the lovely, cartoony sort of stuff that I grew up with. But now I look back on it and I think, actually, no, the Attitude Era had something really special that I didn't appreciate at the time.
We quite often, when we're talking about games, talk about games that had sort of cross over into the mainstream. There were games like Grand Theft Auto and like Street Fighter, Doom, where like you don't have to be into games to have heard of or even played them. And I think the Attitude Era did that for wrestling. I think it was a big crossover moment. And I mean, I imagine they picked up a lot of fans because of it. So I think it's perfect for Netflix wrestling because Netflix has been edging towards background TV with every new show it makes. They've got
it's lost its novelty factor, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just there, and it's they keep on pumping out. They've realised that they can pump out, and I'm not saying this is true of wrestling, because it's obviously a big concern, but in terms of their TV shows, low effort toss with some good looking people and a bit of scandal in it, and people will watch it, and because they'll watch it whilst they're playing on their phones eating their dinner, they're not really that interested. And I think sadly for fans like you, Chris, who are properly into it, that's what wrestling is, because so much of it is not wrestling.
And the Attitude Era is where that started. I think is you had a lot more going on in between, and the onus was on what wasn't happening in the ring. It was all the stories that were being told otherwise, or the interviews and things like that. I mean, Steve Austin, he could get you to watch wrestling without actually doing anything back then, just talking. And a lot of my later years then, like I said, I would have it on in the background. I would either be playing with my wrestling figures, I'll be reading the magazine, I'll be doing something wrestling related, but I wouldn't necessarily be glued to the screen. It would just be playing in the background. And I totally get the amount of talking that goes on nowadays. I mean, it's perfect for what they... Plus, I know they spent a shitload of money on it, but they've been able to get loads and loads of content by basically removing it from WWE Network and landing it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which is great for me because I wasn't paying £10 a month to watch the network because I couldn't justify it. But now I can fill my boots because I've already got a Netflix subscription.
Right.
And I've got it all back. So thank you for that, I will say.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think that's why I say it fits well with their thing. And people are playing for Netflix, and their model has changed from giving people a reason to buy Netflix to not giving them a reason to turn it off. Yeah. Basically.
And it's in your face. Fair enough. My wife, she hates it now because our entire Netflix screens are recommended. It's just all wrestling because of me.
I didn't know that there was a game prior to Wrestlefest, very, very similar, and I've forgotten the name of it. Dave normally pulls me out of these holes. Dave, what was it called?
No, fuck you. Should have done your research.
I did my research, Dave. I drink too much. I have a terrible memory.
I played it earlier today for the first time ever. I've had it on MAME for decades. It's called WWF Superstars.
That's the one.
Made by the same devs about 2 years prior to Wrestlefest.
Yeah, we'll get into the real gamey stuff about the devs a bit later on, I think.
And, in some ways, better.
Ooh. I disagree. I've played it too. My problem with it was that everyone's got the same moves. Really?
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah. It's a rough first draft of what WrestleFest became, but I did think that the ring felt bigger. Yeah. The overall fighting arena felt bigger, and you could do more within that space. WrestleFest has always seemed a bit zoomed in.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that you can sort of get nudged off the edge of the screen, can't you? Almost, you can when you're playing it, you can find yourself only just hanging on, not to the ropes, to the screen. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, some of the moves like the big suplexes and things, if you're standing right at one edge of the ring, basically the person goes to the other edge of the ring.
Yeah.
When you do the move.
And the camera pans ready for it, doesn't it?
Yeah, most of them interfere with the ropes in some way or another, as if they're not designed to fit in that space.
I think that's fair. And I think it's got a really nice graphical style about it. To the extent that if someone said to me, I prefer the look of... I've already forgotten the name of it.
Superstars.
If someone said, I think it looks better, I wouldn't have... I've got no argument for that. I don't agree, but I think if you prefer the look of Superstars, then fair play. I mean, you're not wrong. It's a good-looking game.
One thing that when I found WrestleFest that really struck me, compared to the other WWF games that I played later on like the Mega Drive and that, where it's like pixelated and you can only really tell who's who by the colour of something. WrestleFest, as cartoony as it is, everyone resembled who they're meant to be. It was really clear. It was really vibrant. It was really, really nice looking game to play.
Yeah.
It's a very well made game.
Yeah.
For the time where it could have just been a shitty cash-in piece of crap.
Yeah.
Especially bearing in mind you've got things like Pit Fighter came out around the same time, and that's dreadful. Yeah, exactly. That's the response.
Do you know Pit Fighter, Chris?
I don't.
It's around the same sort of time as Mortal Kombat as well. Actually, I think it's a couple of years earlier.
Yeah, but it was around that era where they thought for some reason that games of that still 16-bit power could do digitized graphics and look and play like they were real life.
Right, I see.
Hence Mortal Kombat originally being that sort of a thing. And Pit Fighter was the first attempt at that, and it was like apocalyptically horrible to play.
Is it rotoscoped? Is that the thing?
No, rotoscope is like flashback.
That's an animation thing, isn't it? Yes,
animation. But it's basically image capture. Basically, Pit Fighter, they've taken lots and lots of pictures of people doing moves. And then tried to piece them together as the graphics for the game as you play it.
Right, okay, yeah.
It's awful. Yeah. It's awful. As awful as Street Fighter the movie, which uses a very similar idea.
Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Yes, sorry, Street Fighter the movie, the game.
Don't. Get me started. Don't speak out against Street Fighter the movie.
Oh no, Street Fighter the movie is terrible,
it's a
Chris.
Masterpiece of something. Yeah.
Why are you defending Street Fighter the movie,
because I would still go back and watch it. I have done recently. I don't know what it is. It's one of those really guilty pleasures from when I was growing up. I was like, there's something...
That's the definition of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, there's some charm about it. You had that and you had Mortal Kombat released more or less at the same time, am I right? Same year, possibly? Or
yeah, they wouldn't have been far apart.
Yeah, around about that.
Maybe.
Worlds apart in terms of, even Mortal Kombat wasn't great, was it? But let's be honest. But I don't know what it was, Street Fighter. I think it's one of those. When I watched it back, only last year, I think it was, I was just looking at all the things probably they could have done better. And I was like, all the little nods that they made. It's like the Super Mario Brothers movie, the original Bob Hoskins one. The slightest little nods here and there, but what the hell have you done to it? You know, where does this exist? And I think I have the same, almost want to fix it, which draws me to Street Fighter. I think that's probably it. It's like a broken child. You kind of want to just pick it up.
Wow. One of the people who comments on it, who's not like a friend of ours, who finds it really amusing when we mispronounce the Japanese names. So, hi to you.
That's not intentional, I assure you.
No, absolutely not. So, Yoshihisa Kishimoto.
One more time.
Yoshihisa Kishimoto. That's 2 words. I'm pronouncing very wrong. Is the main guy behind both the other game that I've forgotten the name of.
WWF Superstars.
Thank you, Dave. And Wrestlefest. He's the guy behind Double Dragon.
Really?
Same guy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's his thing, and he created the whole.
You know what? Now that you say that, I can see it in the art.
Yeah. I mean, about the slightly bigger head, not full on chibi head, but the slightly bigger head. Yeah. But he was behind the whole Kunio-kun thing as well, which we know as Renegade. That was him too.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, he's that's a big thing, big part of that movement. And he did all the Double Dragon games, the Super Dodgeball, which is all part of the Kunio-kun franchise, and then WWF Superstars and Wrestlefest. Really fucking a major part of these brilliant games. How many people of that era, big names in video games, nobody knows that name, nobody's ever heard of him. It's like,
I would say everybody's heard of Yu Suzuki, and that's around that kind of time, isn't it? It's around that sort of era, and those games are just as influential.
I
mean, Double Dragon as a brawler is just as influential as Afterburner, Outrun, Space Harrier, all those games.
So his badly pronounced name is Yoshihisa Kishimoto, and everyone, I'm going to get a T-shirt with his name on it. Like that's an incredible CV of games. He came back very recently, 2017. Double Dragon 4 came out. I haven't played it, but it wasn't received very well. But I think from what I read, it wasn't received very well because it was Double Dragon.
I can see that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? He's basically made a new Double Dragon game.
It's been done.
Yeah, he's not given it RPG elements. You know, he's not any of that nonsense. He's but that's 2017. But he was the director of that as well. It wasn't just a cursory name on the credits. He actually made it. One of the few other wrestling games I ever played was called Rumble Roses, PS2 era wrestling game, made by Ukes, Y-U-K-E-S, were sort of making what were regarded as the best wrestling games at the time, and they made this women-only wrestling game called Rumble Roses, which came out 2004, so very much in that era of women in wrestling for something to entertain the pervy men.
TNA.
Yes, exactly. But it really works as a really sort of a quality wrestling game. It's one-on-one. It's it's got all the moves. It's very, very good. And when you look at the reviews, it's like people got a bit hung up on the fact that it does look trashy. It does look a little bit sleazy and like it's in that mode.
Were they watching wrestling at the time?
Probably not.
No.
Well, I suppose nobody was really, were they?
My comment was going to be they're probably wearing too many clothes for wrestling of that era, really. But I've just had a look at one of the videos actually. Gameplay wise, it reminds me like almost what I consider the next generation of wrestling games, which came after when I passed the Mega Drive. We're talking then the N64 and that, and forgive me if I'm wandering too far into the future, but
no, you go, mate.
That was really when I felt the wrestling games had a lot more depth to it. The gameplay was better, the graphics were more than marginally better.
Yeah,
3D for starters.
Exactly, yeah, and the one that really sticks out to me, WWF Warzone was the first one I got, of that kind of generation. Looking back at it now, it was awful. The gameplay of it was so clunky, but they looked, you kind of got a feel for they felt more realistic. But then WCW NWO Revenge came out and on the N64, and that was the one that really, I think, changed how wrestling games were viewed, because I think there were a few WWF ones after that they tried to emulate. They actually got, I think it was THQ that were behind that game, and then they took on, I think WWF went with them for like No Mercy and a couple of other titles past there. Very, very similar gameplay.
I think THQ are still chucking them out, aren't they?
Are they?
They've always been a name I've associated with the wrestling games.
Yeah, no, they are. They did. They had one 2023. So I'm just looking. Weird sort of segues going on in this conversation, but I was looking up Ukes and all the various wrestling game they made, but they had one out in 2023 that was put out by THQ. So yeah, I think you're right.
And it was quite cartoony when you compare Revenge against Warzone. I suppose it was very much almost like going back to what Wrestlefest were doing. It was cartoony, but it felt more real. You could do a lot more in it.
Yeah, there
wasn't much in terms of gameplay in between the matches. It was just a wrestling game. There was just change of sets that you could compete in. You had a lot more wrestlers to choose from. It had more depth to it, and that became the iconic one, I think, of that era. Particularly, when I was that sort of age, that was one that everyone was playing. And for WCW to actually have a game and one-upmanship over the WWF at that point was probably a big thing as well. Kind of symbolised that they were overtaking them.
They were very much, beyond. Now, as they looking at it now, in the WWE, they seem to be quite open about mentioning other franchises and things going on. But I've never heard of any of them. And it seemed, but remember back in the day, WCW was. I never watched it. But I remember it was fairly prevalent. It was like, in the same way that, you had a PlayStation or an Xbox, you watched WWE and or WCW.
It was the only real competitor, wasn't it, to WWF/E?
It was. And then you hear referred to quite a lot, even today, the Monday Night Wars in wrestling. WWF had Monday Night Raw, you had WCW had Monday Nitro that went head to head, and WCW actually trounced WWF for 83 weeks. They beat them in the TV ratings, and they were considered better because they took Hulk Hogan and they turned him from a good guy to a bad guy, a bit like what Cena's just done. That was the first time anything like that had been done, and all of a sudden everyone wanted to watch over the other side.
Is that the Hollywood Hogan
era?
Yeah.
You've reminded me of something, Chris, that I'd saved to ask you. I was looking up stuff about when the question I asked you earlier about when did Hulk Hogan become bigger than wrestling. I looked up on the internet and there was no consensus, so I thought I'd ask you, which is more interesting than just looking it up on the internet. But
it's more fun.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But as part of that whole conversation, I saw reference to Starcade 1997 as like a big thing, and I thought, I'm not going to dig into that. I'm going to ask Chris what the big deal about Starcade 1997 was.
No pressure.
This was when the main event was Hollywood Hulk Hogan against Sting, and it was supposedly the first time, although they'd had odd moments where they had teased matches and that, this was the first big time that they were going to meet one-on-one. But it was the first time that Sting, I think, was going to wrestle after he had seemingly walked out on WCW, and then he created this like Crow character.
Yeah,
if you've seen that, where he kind of emulated, Brandon Lee's Crow character.
He would just how I remember Sting.
Yeah, so he was teasing that, and this was going on for months and months and months. He would just drop in to the arenas and beat someone up with a baseball bat and walk out again. And Starcade 97 was when Hulk Hogan was going to go one-on-one with Sting, and it was going to be like the biggest match ever. And they completely bombed it because they fluffed the ending. I think it was meant to be, the referee didn't count when they were supposed to, or it was a fast count. One of them was meant to kick out. Anyway, the ending that happened on pay-per-view wasn't the ending that was meant to happen. So they had something absolutely fantastic, and in true WCW style, they completely wrecked it at the last minute. So yeah.
Fantastic.
So, but it was all going to that. It was going to be their massive main event that had never happened, essentially, and it happened, but it didn't quite end the way it should have done.
That's amazing. And also it's reminded me, coming back to our feature game of Wrestlefest, with this whole thing, it's just a bit chaotic because it's an actual game with actual fighting and not a scripted thing. Because normally in a Royal Rumble, there'll be, as like a televised actual Royal Rumble, somebody will be like recovering in a corner. There'll be two people who are hanging onto ropes or something. And so you're only focusing on like even when there's 12 people in the ring, you're only really focusing on like 2 to 4 of them. That's not the case with Wrestlefest. It's all going on at the same fucking time.
Doesn't translate well to a video game. I've never had a Royal Rumble mode that I've enjoyed.
No, and we've mentioned quite a lot. We're big fans of the Dreamcast. I've got Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, and I bought it just because it was a Dreamcast exclusive. I think by that time I wasn't really that bothered by wrestling in that. But it is just a Royal Rumble, and you can have 90 characters. And they come in, I think the max on screen at a time is 10. And it's when somebody gets eliminated, a new one comes in, and they run down the ring. And hilariously, the mechanic of the game, which works brilliantly, is every time you eliminate someone, you've got 3 minutes to start with. If you eliminate someone, it will add some time. In true video game style, it'll just stick 20 seconds on your timer as a win. So you're basically feeding your timer to try and make it through to the end. I would love to see if anyone's ever actually gone from 1 to fucking 90 on the 90 player mode. The standard mode's 30 player, which I think back in the day I may have got to the end of, but 90 is ridiculous. But what's hilarious about that is you're playing the game and if you run out of time, your character literally just jumps out the ring and walks back up the fucking... just walks out. It's just like, shit. Absolutely fucking brilliant. That's it. We never really made it through your list of games. So did you get...
I mean, to be fair, I've rattled off most of them. We then moved on from the Mega Drive onto the N64, where it was Warzone and Revenge, and the only other one was WWF No Mercy, which was, I think, the first THQ one, or THQ backed one that they did.
Gets a lot of love, that game.
Yeah.
Looking at various sort of what good wrestling games are, that one gets a lot of mentions. People like that a lot.
Which is funny, because I think that really took almost like the blueprint of what Revenge was, because they took the creators of it, the developers of it, and just basically put their WWF spin on the top of it, and proved more successful. Well, not more successful, but I think for each promotion, it's those games that they're best remembered for. WCW had some really ropey ones, I think, before that. I don't really know how they ever fell in and got such a good game with Revenge out of what they'd done before, but
it happened.
You did,
it really did.
But yeah, that was pretty much the extent of it. I just used to wear them through. I used to be on them all the time, and the Create a Wrestler feature was always quite fun.
When did that come in?
The first one that I played on was Warzone. So when it got to that kind of generation of the games, and Revenge had it as well. I think from that point on, they had them. No Mercy, I think, was where I made some of my best ones. I think I created them based on myself, but for some reason, I was in sort of S&M gear to rival Demolition at one point. I don't understand why, but it was quite an interesting look. So
some sort of latent fantasies that you had at the time, obviously.
Considering I was like 14, 15 at the time, I don't even want to know. So when they started introducing like the storylines, you could go through career mode in them. I think by that point possibly as well, and you pick someone and you go through each stage from right at the bottom up to winning the world title or whatever. It was my little bit. That was how I lived vicariously through the computer screen.
Chris, did you game into the PS2 era?
I did a little bit, yeah. So I was at uni then, so I had one briefly. I went through, in my first year at uni, I went through the Xbox, I went through the GameCube, I went through the PS2. So not in any great depth.
Do you remember a short-lived series of games called Def Jam Vendetta?
Yes, I knew of them.
But those games are brilliant wrestling games. Like really, really good, but with real rappers in as the characters, sort of overplaying and over sort of that, basically turning their rap personas into wrestling personas, and then but really, really good games, both of them, Def Jam Vendetta and Def Jam Fight for New York. Really great games. Really objectionable attitude to women, but that was the 2000 video game, sadly.
It was fitting for the time and the culture surrounding Def Jam.
Yes.
Excuse them.
Which was hideous, but yeah. Really great games. Really good. And I think for a while, I think Def Jam Fight for New York was one of those games that was costing a lot of money. Just looking at the list of people who are in it, so sort of names you might recognise, Joe Budden, Ludacris, Method Man, Scarface were all in Def Jam Vendetta. Fight for New York. bigger names, obviously as a sequel since the first one had come and gone, but Lil' Kim, Snoop Dogg, Method Man and Redman, Slick Rick, Scarface, Ghostface Killer, Fat Joe, Mobb Deep, Ice-T, Exhibit, Busta Rhymes, Bubba Sparxxx, Sean Paul, Henry Rollins, Christopher Judge, Carmen Electra, all these people in the sequel. But yeah, very cool games in terms of just really well made wrestling games.
I never knew that type of games they were. I used to see them on the shelf. Yeah, I was never inspired to pick them up. Had I known what they were and bothered to look at them, I'd probably would give them a go.
Definitely worth a look. They play really, really well. Lots and lots of fun. And sort of they're in real world places, so you can, like, I don't know, suplex somebody into an underground train if you want to, because you're fighting on an underground platform. Yes, EA Canada were involved in the development, and EA Canada made brilliant games. They don't exist anymore. Chris, did you give any time to cocktails?
I have. Well,
oh, bless you. I said this in the Toka, and I know it's not your thing, and I love the fact that you've given it a bit of thought.
This is actually my wife gave me this one. Immediately, as I said to her last night, I said, I just need to have a look for, some ideas for wrestling themed cocktails. She was like, right on. She gave me one. I was like, perfect. As long as I'm allowed it, obviously.
No, allowed whatever you want.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You're as a guest, you don't know, because you did Blue Laguna, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what you got there for us this time?
So I've got, now I know the game we've been talking about is fairly retro, so this is why I wasn't sure if I was allowed it, because the cocktail is of slightly more recent, not a slightly more recent characters, but I've gone for Hurricane as the cocktail. Don't know if you're familiar with the wrestler The Hurricane, who was around in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Alex Higgins?
No, not quite as good.
I love the idea of Alex Higgins wrestling.
The Hurricane was he was a piss take basically on the superhero character. He would be Gregory Helms, a news reporter in the back, and then he becomes the Hurricane when he goes to the ring, complete with cape and very, very epic, bombastic. One of the best theme tunes I think of that era. If you find the time to
I
to
need to look that up. That sounds hilarious.
So Hurricane
can't not look now.
So for this one, I haven't tried it, but this is going on my list for the next time I do a bit of a booze shot. 1 part dark rum, 1 part white rum, half part overproofed rum, which was new on me, passion fruit syrup and lemon juice. You shake it all together with ice, then pour into the glass and serve over ice. So this was a bit of a double header one, so I'm having the Hurricane on the rock.
Hey. Nice.
We do like a pun.
Oh, we are all about the pun.
She gave me this is all hers. She gave me that as well. I can't claim the credit, but I will.
Claim it. No one cares.
I could have gone for another one, but I didn't. I went for that one. So there we go.
And I'm loving your work on the Hurricane on the rocks, mate. Good work.
Thank you.
Hurricane on the rock.
On the rock.
The rock.
Just one ice cube to make it.
Yeah, technically, if it's one ice cube, it's the rock.
Yeah, there you go.
Fair. Love it. What do you go for, Dave?
One of my favourite moves in wrestling in general, but also in Wrestlefest, is the Boston Crab.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where you have somebody face down on the floor, you sort of sit on their ass, grab their feet under your arms and try to snap them in half like a lobster. And I've always thought, if you ever did that to anybody in real life, like with genuine, like your full amount of strength, you would literally snap their spine. But because of that, it's always stood out as like a really good move. And I don't think anybody's ever really done it as like their signature thing. Chris, you could probably prove me wrong on this.
What I know one who had, Rick Martel had it.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. There's one.
There you go.
Of all the people who've ever wrestled, only one person ever made the Boston Crab their big thing. I found a cocktail, which sounds quite nice, called the Boston Flip.
That's got raw egg in it, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, you'll know this as an egg recipe because it's got the word flip in it somewhere. But it also sounds like something you could do, like a wrestling move. We've got the Boston Crab, but this guy's got this somersault thing that he does. We're going to call it the Boston Flip. That'll do.
It's the counter to the Boston Crab. It's the way out of the Boston Crab. So,
is it? Well, there you go.
I don't know. You could do. No, it's not. I was just saying that would perfectly fit.
No, it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
You
well
said
done.
it is. You're the expert and you said it is.
I don't know. Not everything that comes out of my mouth is right.
You wait till the edit, Chris. It absolutely will be that way.
Yeah. You are the expert. Shut up. So yeah, it sounds quite nice actually. It's 60ml of, I'll give it the full Difford's treatment, Evan Williams Black Label Bourbon, 60ml of Rainwater / Verdelho medium dry Madeira wine, which is a lot of words for saying Madeira. Then 7.5ml of Monam pure cane sugar syrup and 1 fresh egg, white and yolk. So select and pre-chill a goblet glass, prepare garnish of grated nutmeg, shake all the ingredients with ice, strain into the shaker, dry shake, as we know is without the ice, to emulsify it, fine strain into a chilled glass and garnish with dusting of nutmeg. There's no history, nothing, so...
Nothing at all?
Yep, nothing. There's a few comments, but nothing about like the origin or where it comes from or who made it or anything. So might be able to find it somewhere else. Difford's is sometimes a repository of cocktails that people have made and published elsewhere and then just put the recipe on here. So there might be more to it elsewhere, but in regards to Difford's, there's not a lot.
Yeah.
Looks nice though. Sounds nice.
It does sound good. Yeah, some people, I know, we've talked about this last time we had an egg in a cocktail, get a bit icky about raw egg. Get over it.
Yeah, definitely.
End of.
Yeah.
Nice
egg and milk. Just grow up.
Yeah, both of them. Grow the fuck up.
I'll hold my tongue. So.
Oh.
You've clearly never tried Dave.
No, you won't. What's your? Do you not like? Is it one or both of those things you don't like?
Both, and I'm not going to say it's through any kind of experience. It's just that I just don't like the sound of it. So
yeah, no, people do find it oddly off-putting. It's a weird thing, isn't it? It's like
let me prove you wrong.
What I find weird about it is these are, when you think about it, an egg and milk are both basically the fundamentals of life. And yet we're still icky about eating them.
It's like saying you don't like bread. Milk, eggs, breathing.
That's just, eggs are one of those things that I do prefer when they're on the cooked side, I suppose, rather than the raw side. So
I tell you what, here's the thing, right? Eggs, raw, fine. Cooked, fine. In the middle, fuck
fine.
off. No. Oh, God.
In the middle, salmonella.
Yeah.
Amazing. I went down a complete rabbit hole on my cocktail and I've ended up on something barely relevant. I just couldn't resist because it was just such a brilliant thing.
What you got?
We sort of look up various terms, and when we're looking for these, in all sorts of ways, we look for these cocktails. Always go to a good amount of effort to find a good, relevant cocktail. This cocktail is completely irrelevant, but I found it I was looking up wrestling moves, and I looked up the DDT.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Which has always been one of my favourite wrestling moves for its glorious simplicity of slamming someone's face into the canvas. And I found out about a drink that may or may not have existed called the Mickey Slim. And the Mickey Slim, right? So this is a shot of gin, or 2 shots of gin if you like. And to add to that, you add a shot of Sven, mate. You're going to love this. If you think the Japanese pronunciations are bad, you add a pinch of dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane.
DDT.
More commonly known as DDT, which is an insecticide banned in most countries.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody knows whether this existed or not, or whether it was just an apocryphal urban legend. But it's basically, gin with a dash of insecticide. And that was called the Mickey Slim. And so, just brilliant. And it's mentioned in a book called The Daedalus Book of Absinthe. And the reason for it being mentioned in that book is this was at a time when absinthe as a product was not as well controlled as it is now. So the stories about people having hallucinations drinking absinthe are mostly nonsense, but they probably come from the fact that way back in the day, absinthe was basically toilet wine, flavoured like aniseed, and could be made of just about anything. So there probably were a few people who had hallucinations from drinking it. And so the thing that people say about the Mickey Slim is that the effects was a bit like absinthe. I was thinking, I heard about this and I thought I'm going to try and remake that as a new cocktail, but with ingredients that aren't going to kill you.
Where's the fun in that?
And it turns out somebody already had. I found it on the homebarmenu.com. Hi guys. And basically what they've done is take an absinthe drip, which I'll get into in a sec, and add gin to it. Gin being the base of the Mickey Slim. So an absinthe drip is you put about 45 ml of absinthe in the bottom of the glass. With every bottle of absinthe, you get a spoon. You put the spoon over the top of the glass, put a sugar cube in, and then drip water on the top of it until the sugar cube's dissolved. Tends to be about 45 ml of absinthe to about 60 ml of water. And as it does that, the absinthe goes cloudy, gets a really cool look to it, and is also diluted. And absinthe is not as brutal as people say. I mean, it's between sort of 55-75% alcohol. So definitely nice to have it with a bit of sugar and water in it. It makes it more drinkable. So that's an absinthe drip. That's a standard, like, classic French cocktail. And so this is exactly the same thing, but 2 parts gin, 1 part absinthe. And then do the whole drip thing into it as well. And it just makes it a lot more drinkable and gives it a little bit of an extra edge. It's really quite nice. I drank them a couple of these earlier today because I figured I'd get them out of the way early so I had time to recover before we recorded.
Just in case.
Just in case. I did one of each, a classic absinthe drip, and then this. I prefer the absinthe drip, but I love aniseed, and the strong aniseed flavour and that classic way of drinking aniseed really appeals to me. But I think if you're not so into it, this is a really nice way of diluting it. You basically diluting the absinthe with gin rather than with just water. Which, you know, when it's a double shot of gin, it's not really much of a dilution, but it just takes, you know, if you're not a big fan, and the kind of the floral, the juniper and the botanicals flavours of gin work well with aniseed. I think it's a great little drink. But yeah, I found it by Googling DDT, and that's the only relevance it's got to wrestling in any way, shape or form.
Good enough.
As I say, Dave, my fucking circus, my fucking monkeys. And I think that's probably it. We'll probably better let Chris get off to bed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have we got something lined up for next week, Dave?
So, no, episode 34 is currently blank.
So we better pick something. What would you like to hear us do an episode on, Chris?
I don't get the time to listen to many podcasts at all. So there is one game I commented back to you on way back, I think, when I was on it last time. I don't know if you've done it, so apologies if you have, but Zool.
Was it you that talked about Zool?
Yeah.
It's on the list still.
Absolutely love the game. There was something really hypnotic about that game when I used to play it as a kid. I think it's all the references to, you know, Chopper Chups and 7-Up and all that kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Yes.
It's great.
I remember you talking about that before.
No, and the soundtrack. Because soundtrack was awesome.
I tell you what, Dave, it is a good one because there's so many other games to talk about from around that time, like Cool Spot and those other branded stuff. I think there's content there, mate.
I'm quite happy to do Zool.
Excellent.
It's a game I didn't play much when it came out, but I did play, so I know it and I know of it. Zool is a game I know of. Played it a little bit originally when it first came out. Didn't own an Amiga, so didn't have it to play for any proper amount of time. Remember it being quite smooth, quite a fast platformer shooter thing with a ninja ant.
Yeah, and if the bosses are like, you know, a large scale CD player and things like that. I remember it's fun. Depending what the level was.
I love it.
It was great.
The last time we chose a game that Dave hadn't played before, it was a resounding success. So let's do that again.
No, but I have played this. I know what this is.
Okay.
Rocket Knight was an anomaly. No, I sort of put Zool in the same sort of bracket as I would put James Pond and James Pond 2 Robocod. They're quite similar. Side-scrolling, vaguely shoot 'em up, but not really.
This is what I mean about, I think it gives us a lot to talk about. We've not really crossed over before. So I think it's a really good shout, Chris.
Yeah, no.
Appreciated. Yeah, we'll do that. Cool. Zool next time out.
There we go.
The Amiga classic platforming game where we will make you want to eat lots of Chopper Chups on Cocktail Mode, the podcast where gaming, like alcohol, is in our blood. Say bye, Dave.
Bye.
Say bye, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
And that's a bye from me. Stole your joke, Dave.
It's not my joke, and it's a shit joke.
Well, no, it's a very shit, very old joke.
I did it literally like once and thought, I hate myself and want to die. I'm not doing that ever again.